Yes. Feel free. No, don't worry. We stand up here. Sure. Come on up. Come on up. You want your photo? You want your photo? You want a photo, Mallory? No, that's just
Call me when you need.
Good evening, Pontiac.
Good evening.
Or should I say, what up, dog? That's what we would say if we were in Detroit. So excited that you guys are able to join us today. We have a nice event set up for you guys, hosted by City Councilman Chris Jackson. I am going to turn this event over to him, and you guys will be able to ask him questions later.
Pontiac, how y'all doing tonight? Good. Well, as Kai mentioned, I am Councilman Jackson, Chris Jackson here in District 1, so welcome to beautiful downtown Pontiac. We need you to come more often. We love seeing you all here. Tonight, we are here at Fillmore 13 in downtown Pontiac. I don't know if Lee is around, but Lee, I think he might be over at the Kegger Burger, but this is his establishment. So certainly want to thank him for allowing us to be here tonight. A couple of house cleaning items, chips and salsa, most of you have found right there in the back. If you are interested in other food and or drinks, you can go to the bar, and then the restrooms are to your left and around the corner if you need it, all right? So now that we have that done, thank you for being here. So for me, Pontiac is a town of about 50,000 or so people with a lot of potential. At one point, we accomplished quite a bit. That's when Generous Motors was in town. And now that they left, we've been trying to find our identity, trying to figure out what it means for us to exist in Oakland County. A couple of cool things that are in process is that Oakland County, its executive offices are moving into downtown Pontiac. So if it looks, absolutely. So shout out to Dave Coulter for that. I'll be going to his state of the county right after this. But I certainly just want to say we are back in a lot of ways. I just saw one of my colleagues walk in the door, actually, President Adrian Austin. Thank you for being here, sir. And so there are a lot of people in the room, at least from Pontiac, that I want to acknowledge right quick, if that's okay. So former Commissioner of Pontiac, Jeff Kingston, thank you for being here, sir. Pastor McDonald, always a pleasure to have you here, Prospect Christian Baptist Church. Who am I missing? Please, Renita Duvall, former Pontiac Library Board member, Main Street, Pontiac. There you are. Some folks from downtown proper, Amir. If you've ever been to Electricity down the street and have fun at that club, that's this man's club. Amir, thank you for being here. Blair McGowan, he's been here for 30 years at the Crowfoot, so certainly thank you for being here, sir. Like I said, I'm just looking for Pontiac folks. So sorry if I missed you. I'll be happy to mention you later. But thank you all for coming. So without delay, certainly want to get to the conversation, because here we are. There's a lot going on in our world today, right? And we feel it and we see it. But more importantly, if we can't move past the kitchen table conversations, the things that impact us every day, the price of gas, the price of groceries, and what we're going to do to be safe in our community. If we can't figure those things out, then the other stuff just doesn't matter nearly as much to us and our families. Not that it's not important, but when you're trying to survive, it's hard to think about other things. And so for me as executive director, formerly the executive director of the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus, Senator McMorrow and I had an opportunity to work together closely on a lot of legislation. And I've seen firsthand what she's capable of accomplishing because we work together to get things done in Lansing. And I'm here and doing this because I want all of you to have the same opportunity to hear from her, ask your questions. Hopefully some of my questions hit some of the things that you all want to know about. But without further ado, and if you're okay with it, I want to introduce to you current State Senator Mallory McMorrow.
Give it up for Council Member Chris Jackson! Hey. I know we have a long, kind of narrow room. We do have some seats in the front if people want to come and sit. Crisscross applesauce, as my 5-year-old would say. You're welcome to come up front. Can everybody hear us in the back? Okay, we got that sorted. 11 months into the campaign, we got a sound system that everybody can hear in a crowded room. So that's good, we're making progress. I want to keep my remarks short tonight because I want this to be a conversation, but I just want to start by acknowledging the horror that we have seen play out over the last few days in our country. The President of the United States unilaterally took us back into war. And I gotta tell you, I have now been campaigning since April of last year. You learn a lot when you get across the state. People are concerned about the price of gas. Well, that's gone up 10 cents within the last few days. People are concerned about economic opportunity. People are concerned about whether or not their kids are gonna have the opportunities that they had to stay in Michigan and make a life. People are concerned about democracy. I have not heard one person in the last year of this campaign say that they want to be dragged into another forever war. And that is what we're facing. The President came out and said very callously, we've already lost a couple of service members. That's just the price of war. That's it. This is a man who didn't serve our country. He claimed he had bone spurs. But what I know is that the people who are going to pay the price are working families in Michigan. I was on a briefing a couple of days ago with Congressman Jason Crow, who has served. And he shared with me something that I think is a good moment for us to anchor ourselves in. When you look back at Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States never lost a single battle. So you're going to hear a lot about successes of the military, because we do have the best military in the world. But just because we won the battle doesn't mean there was ever an answer of why. Why were we there? Why were we there for so long? And that is what we are being dragged into again. This is a president who promised people, when he was elected again, that he would end wars, not start wars. And that's the moment that we find ourselves in right now. This is going to cost us $1 billion a day, with a B, a day. At a moment when we're talking about what does the future of economic development and opportunity look like in Pontiac? What does the future look like for housing, for education, for our kids, for our babies? How do we ensure we have paid leave in this country? How do we ensure that no child goes hungry? How do we ensure that we have universal health care? All of these things. But we can afford $1 billion a day for a war of choice that Congress had no say in. The Republicans in the Senate voted down a war powers resolution. And it's not about Congress, but that is the one voice that we have in that decision. Whether or not we go to war, that is what Congress is sent there to do, and they said, we don't want that power. We just want to hand it over to this man to do whatever he wants to do. But I do want to start on a positive note. Kristi Noem doesn't have a job anymore. The memes are already so good. For those who don't know me, who are here for the first time, a couple of you said you were out to listen. Thank you. That's what all of this is about. I am Mallory McMorrow. I am currently the State Senate Majority Whip, and I am running to serve alongside you as your next United States Senator. And I say that very intentionally, with you, not for you. Because there are too many politicians who walk into a room and tell you they have all the answers for your life. They're going to tell you what's best for you, and they're going to go to Washington to fight for you, instead of listening to you and fighting with you. Because here's what I know, it does not matter what title somebody has. None of us can do any of this alone. We can't. But all of us together are so much more powerful than we are alone. And I want to share just one example of what that looks like recently. I was out in Romulus last week at the protest about the ICE facility. I don't know if y'all heard about this. ICE outbid an automotive supplier to acquire a warehouse in Romulus to turn it into a detention center. I just want you to think about that and really internalize it for a second. Our own federal government is taking away jobs and economic development and opportunity in our signature industry so that they can buy a warehouse to house human beings in it. It is not designed for that purpose. So I joined alongside hundreds of members of the community who came out. It was cold. But if we learned anything watching Minnesota and Minneapolis, it's that we can't let the cold stop us. We came together, we used our voices, and what was so powerful about seeing this protest was that protesters weren't out there alone. They were out there with Senator Darren Camilleri, who's the state senator for that district. They were out there with me. They were out there with Lieutenant Governor. They were out there with their city council members. And this was a unique distinction. They came out and said that city council, we have your back. And then the city council went in and unanimously voted to oppose this detention center. And I think that experience starts to send a powerful message, because I mean it. None of us can do this alone. But when we rally together, when we use our voices, when we come together, local officials, state officials, federal officials, with city council, when we work as a team, we start to send a message and we rebuild faith with people. That it is not that your government has turned against you, because that can feel really dark and devastating. But that the Trump administration is acting against the rest of us. And when we realize that, I talked to a 96-year-old man last week on the phone, and he said he was inspired to get up and to come out and to start organizing because he saw those moms in Minnesota stand in the breach, stand face to face with masked ICE agents, knowing it was the right thing to do. Now, I'm running for U.S. Senate because this moment requires that we meet this moment with the urgency that this moment requires. I have not always been in politics. After the 2016 election, I Googled how to run for office. I had never done this before. My background was in car design, media, advertising. I had a very different career before this one. But I was so horrified that a man could get elected to the highest office in this land by putting some people down to say there's not enough for all of us, by weaponizing our suffering against each other, by convincing you that if you're not doing as well as your parents, well, it's somebody else's fault. Whether it's people of color, whether it's immigrants, whether it's women, whether it's the LGBTQ community, you name it. It was weaponizing us against each other, and he won. So I decided to step in. I challenged my state senator, who was the Republican incumbent. He had won his last election by 16 points, and when I told the local Democratic Party what I wanted to do, one of them looked me dead in the eye and said, "Oh, honey, that's cute." You want to wonder why the Democratic Party is not all that popular right now. But when I heard that, it gave us a lot of freedom, because I recognized that there was no expectation that we were going to win. So we got to run the campaign that we wanted to run. We brought together more than 500 volunteers over the course of a year and a half. We knocked on every door that we could find, and what I heard more than anything else was people on their doorsteps here in Oakland County who looked at me and said, "You remind me so much of my daughter, who left Michigan. Why are you here? And what can we do to bring our kids back or make sure they stay?" And that became the umbrella over everything that we do. That's the umbrella for civil rights, voting rights, economic opportunity, housing, protecting our water, protecting our air, everything. And when all the votes were counted on election night, we beat it by 4 points. That's a 20-point swing in a single cycle, so don't let anybody tell you we can't organize and win everywhere, because we can. Now, a few years after that, some of you may have seen a speech that I gave from the state Senate floor. It was a pretty dark time. Republicans had controlled our state Senate since 1984. We hadn't been able to get a whole lot done, and I thought this was going to be the last speech that I ever gave, truly. I thought I had failed at this job and I was going to quit. But then tens of millions of people saw that speech, joke's on me, and I used that to open a path. We raised millions of dollars. I supported a dozen other candidates running for state Senate all across the state. Brought my volunteers all across the state, and we helped flip control of the Michigan Senate for the first time since 1984. So I come to you today as the Senate Majority Whip, and I know that it's not enough just to win. Because there are a lot of people right now who look at both parties as the same. They say Democrats and Republicans, they just go to Washington to become multimillionaires. They accept corporate PAC donations. They don't care about me. They don't care about my life. They don't care about what I've been through. So when we took power in Lansing, we governed like we give a damn. We repealed the 1931 abortion ban. We vastly expanded access to reproductive health care. We repealed the seniors' pension tax, putting $1,000 back in seniors' pockets. We passed filter-first legislation to ensure no child ever drinks lead-tainted drinking water in a school or a child care facility ever again. We created a universal breakfast and lunch program so no child goes hungry. Education and families save $15,000 a year. We expanded civil rights. We expanded voting rights. We expanded affordable housing. We've done so much good work. We could be here for days about what we did, but that's not what we're here to do. Now, I'm running for U.S. Senate because the status quo is broken. People will not vote for you just because you have a D next to your name. It's not enough. This administration is tearing everything down to the studs. And here's what I know. We can show the rest of the country how we can fight like Michigan, how we can win, how we can build power back, and then when we do, we will make people's lives better. We have an opportunity to restore and rebuild the American dream from right here in Michigan. Now with that, we're going to have a great conversation about some of the issues that are really pressing right now. And I want to share just one last thing, because it's honest. When I first Googled how to run for office, it was reactionary. I was angry. But I've learned so much from so many of you over my last almost 8 years in the legislature about the power that we all have, the good that we can do. And I come into this campaign not only as somebody who will do everything it takes to make our country work better, but I come into this race as Noah's mom. You see, I gave birth to my first daughter during my time in office, and what I know is you do not mess with moms. I will do anything to make sure she has every opportunity, every right, every liberty that I had, and then some, and I will do the same for every single one of your kids. We know how to get things done, and then we know how to go home and support our families. So with that, thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a short conversation about some pressing issues, and then if you have questions, we'll open it up, and you can ask away.
So, right quick, I'd be remiss. Tamika Renzi Brown, I think she's still here. Just want to say shout out to her. She is absolutely the person in Pontiac that does the most to make sure there's equity across the board for everybody. Former Council President Kermit Williams was here, so certainly want to acknowledge him. And then also Precinct Delegate Veronica Taylor, it's her birthday. She's here, so happy birthday to her. Yeah. So anyway, just wanted to make sure we got all the folks that we could. Rob Kalman as well. Sorry, hold on.
There he is.
Keego Harbor, there it is. Keego Harbor City Council member Rob Kalman is here as well, so thank you for being here. All right, first question. You ready?
Ready.
All right, cool. GVI, so some people call it gun violence intervention, others call it gang violence intervention, but really it's both. GVI programming is funded through ARPA dollars, the American Rescue Plan Act, in Pontiac specifically and across communities in Michigan. That funding is dissipating, yet the work the group is doing is vital as we look to be more proactive than reactive. So what are your thoughts about possible solutions for funding for GBI in neighborhoods?
It's a great question. I'm going to ask a question. Feel free to raise your hand if you don't want to. How many people have been impacted by gun violence in this room? Got a few. I lost a friend in the Virginia Tech shooting. And I remember watching that, how helpless it felt that this was just something we accepted as a country. And I didn't think there was anything that we could do about it. And when I first ran for office, there were high school students who reached out to me. As a candidate, I didn't hold office yet. And they wanted to sit down with me at a coffee shop on a Sunday, and they demanded to know, what are you going to do? And one of the most depressing things as I got older and I entered into this work was when I would tell my story, the number of people who would say, I lost somebody too. And yeah, school shootings get a lot of the headlines, but the ones that don't, there are people being lost every single day to senseless gun violence, to fights that could have been de-escalated, to people callously leaving a loaded firearm out at home, thinking that it's safe. When I know I've got a 5-year-old, kids are curious. They're going to find something, they're going to figure it out. We lost 2 babies in Detroit just over the last few weeks from guns that have been left unsecured at home. A 5-year-old that got out of his mom's minivan running to a slide was shot and killed between the minivan and the slide. And an 18-year-old who dove in front of him to try to save this baby's life was also killed. It happens every day. And we don't even read about it. We've become numb to it. So I've been proud to lead on gun violence prevention legislation. My first bill ever signed into law took 5 years, created Michigan's red flag law. We also passed universal background checks, safe schools. We closed the domestic violence loophole. And we've invested in community violence intervention programs. Now, some of you may have seen headlines. In cities across the country, homicide rates are at an all-time low. And it's not an accident as to why. These are places that have been investing in community violence intervention programs. Now, for people who don't know what CVI is, it's community-led initiatives, oftentimes led by people who had been involved in gangs in the past, in violence in the past, who know intimately what it's like. Many who have served time, who come back out and they use their experience, their relationships within the community to recognize when tension is flaring and being able to de-escalate it before a crime happens. My guest, this year for the State of the State address just last week was Zoe Kennedy, the Executive Director of Force Detroit, who's now leading, one of the leading voices in the state and the country on how community violence intervention works. So yeah, ARPA dollars are expiring, but what I'm proposing is permanent community violence intervention funding, creating a national office of community violence intervention, and then state and local offices in every state and county who can build up a network of these community leaders who recognize, who are building relationships, who are de-escalating situations before it leads to gun violence. That's not only the right thing to do, it saves us money. I was talking to an emergency room physician in Chicago who I've gotten to know, and he shared with me just the cost, the number of people who come in being treated for gun violence and how much it costs us. So it will also help decrease our health insurance costs because those costs are spread on all of us. So it's the right thing to do, and I think if we approach it by saying, yes, it is an investment, but we save lives and we save money on the back end, it's also the fiscally responsible thing to do.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. All right, so just as important as public safety and preventing violence in our communities are, as is our future, aka our kids, right? We all care about the future, hopefully, in this room because you care about the future. So you were directly involved in RX Kids starting. It is involved, right? And it's expanding to other communities, and that includes Pontiac. We too have RX Kids, and I'll let you explain a little bit about what that is. But can you speak to the program's importance for communities like ours and why you decided to get engaged in the first place?
How many people here have heard of RX Kids? We got some hands, great. Okay, RX Kids is a program that was created here in Michigan. It was piloted, created, invented by Dr. Mona Hanna. She is the whistleblower of the Flint water crisis. She's a pediatrician. So she saw firsthand the impact of, let's be honest, a government decision that negatively impacted the lifelong health of babies drinking water. But it also gave her this idea of how can we help set moms and babies off to start life healthier. Because that first year of a baby's life is the most important year for brain development, for body development, for growth. And again, talking about prevention and cost savings over the lifetime, if we can start to make that year of life successful, healthy, then you set kids up for success and families up for success over the long haul. So she piloted this program in Flint. It's a cash grant program for new moms, $1,500 while the woman is pregnant, and then $500 a month for either 6 months or up to a year of that baby's first year of life. The results were phenomenal. They saw an almost 50% reduction in evictions. They saw significantly healthier birth rates. They saw significant reductions in NICU admissions because babies were being born healthier and didn't need remediation right at the beginning. And because it was a pilot, they got a ton of research on how the women were spending the money. Now this is going to shock all the women. Zero fraud or abuse. When you gave moms cash, they spent it on diapers, food, formula, transportation to get to, in that first year of the baby's life, there's so many doctor's appointments. So many. Making sure you could get there. So it was so successful. And it made that point in life where you get pregnant and you give birth just a little bit easier for families when everything is so expensive. That one of the things I am proudest of is we took that successful pilot and helped redirect $250 million of the state away from corporate welfare, tax incentives for big companies that traditionally has been used to create low-wage jobs. And we took $250 million away and said, let's expand RX Kids statewide. So RX Kids is coming to Pontiac, it's in Detroit, it's in the Upper Peninsula, it's in Kalamazoo, it's in Ypsilanti, it's in rural areas, it's in urban areas. And the great thing about it is, it's simple. If you're pregnant, you reach out, you sign up for the program, you get the cash. By not having to jump through hoops, you allow moms to be able to focus on having a healthy pregnancy and focusing on their babies. So I am now proposing that we expand this successful program nationwide. And I think there's a real possibility to do it because we have even the President of the United States who was proposing a baby bonus. He said, we should give new moms $5,000. And I sort of made fun of it at the time because it was just not well thought through. But there's a common goal there. There's an acknowledgement on both sides of the aisle that starting a family is too hard and too expensive, and we got to make it easier.
And when I say housing affordability, I don't mean affordable housing necessarily, because I know we need affordable housing, low-income housing, we need workforce housing, we need luxury homes depending on where you live and where you are. But when we talk about housing affordability, it's a major issue in Oakland County and across the state of Michigan. So what steps would you take in the U.S. Senate to address rising housing costs and ensure that working families in cities like Pontiac can afford quality housing?
Huge problem. I serve on the Senate Appropriations Committee and just yesterday we had a presentation, and this was something that an expert presented that I had never really thought about. Think about if you get a mortgage. When you apply for a mortgage, you have to prove that you have a good credit rating. You have to prove that you can put enough of a down payment in. And if you aren't considered worthy, you get denied a mortgage. Now this expert shared the government regulates mortgages with an iron fist, but the rental market, pretty unregulated. It's up to the landlord. So you now see rents are skyrocketing, and people are taking on, instead of the 20 to 30% of their income, that is what's recommended to be spent on housing, people are spending 50% of their income, 60% of their income, 70% of their income, all of their income, just on rent. So for our residents to be successful, and I want to just say this bluntly, particularly for Black Americans who have been locked out of the housing market due to redlining, due to contract pricing, this is about building generational wealth as well, an asset that you can pass on to your family, and we have to address the lack of equity here and make sure more people are able to become homeowners and not just renters. Now, you're going to hear a theme here. We've done a lot that's successful in the states. States are laboratories of democracy, and I want to take what we've done successfully and bring it to Washington. We invested more than $50 million annually into the first ever permanent housing fund in the state of Michigan. We set a goal for ourselves of building or rehabbing 75,000 housing units by 2026. We surpassed that goal, and we are on the way to 115,000, improving the supply for our homeowners. There's also, on the other end of things, there's creative reuses for housing. I represent a portion of Detroit right now, and one of the things I'm most proud of is helping secure funding to bring back the Violet T. Lewis College, which had been long shuttered, and bring it back as senior apartments. So that seniors are not just moving into low-income housing, that oftentimes feels like low-income housing, but a place that is tied to and from the community, that is something to be proud of and that is beautiful. You deserve to love the place you live. So I want to take that. I also want to help pass federal grants. Tell me what you think of this idea. This is how we can work together. One of the things we know is that zoning is a huge issue. But it's really hard for local leaders to take on zoning reform because people have a lot of thoughts. So let's pass federal grants that encourage some creative zoning loosening to bring in multifamily housing where it makes sense, with incentives and cash attached to it. So you actually get more revenue as a local municipality if you're helping to address the housing shortage, which will hopefully make it easier for local officials to go back to their community and make the case for why we are doing it. Make it incentivize, bring it in. We got to make it easier to build. And also, finally, we have to treat the housing crisis like a crisis. There should be a jobs guarantee program for builders to build housing because we have to address our housing stock shortage that was plummeted during the 07-09 recession. And with all of these things together, including first-time home buyer grants, making it easier for people to become homeowners, we can start to chip away at this crisis working together.
I approve that message. All right, this will be my last question, and then we'll open it up to some folks in the crowd, if that's okay with y'all. So while we have a conversation around immediate economic needs, and those certainly exist, part of good leadership is anticipating what's coming tomorrow at the same time, right? Because we are currently experiencing the last 20 or 30 years of decision making in our communities. And so if we consider that, we start to think about what are we doing now to make decisions for the future, right? So what is your perspective on long-term economic challenges and opportunities, more importantly, for our state? Consider about some challenges long-term, but also what are some opportunities?
So the council member and I have talked about this quite a bit. I think it's reactive instead of proactive. We see that we've lost some job opportunities to the south, so all of a sudden there's no amount of money that's too great for us to capture those opportunities again. And we do it at the expense of long-term planning that is unique to each community. It's sort of this blunt, one-size-fits-all approach statewide, instead of recognizing that what Pontiac needs is probably different than what Kalamazoo needs, is probably different than what the Upper Peninsula needs, and every region should be successful. I introduced legislation that passed out of the Senate with a conservative Republican, bipartisanship as possible, to create a 10-year comprehensive economic development strategy that is regionalized, that focuses on what's an industry that we want to grow in this region, and then how can we, as I get to the federal level, create grants, create loans where the regions are able to secure dollars to help grow into emerging industries. You and I have talked a lot about healthcare. Healthcare is one of the few sectors that is growing more rapidly than any other sector, which makes sense. We talk about the health crisis all the time, and too often the conversation is just trapped in insurance. Universal health care, all of that conversation is just about insurance, instead of expanding actual access. How are we bringing on more doctors, more nurses, more clinics, more flexibility, more hours? How many people can see their doctor when your doctor is only open 8 to 4? If you have a job, or if you work nights, or if you have nights off, or if you work weekends, the flexibility is not there. So I think there's a really exciting opportunity, and I look forward to working with you on it, where Pontiac can become a healthcare hub and be a center for piloting a lot of programs like RX Kids, things that we can do, we can try here, really invest in, that when they work, because I know they will, because if there's one thing about Michigan, we're creative, we're innovative, we're scrappy, we'll make it work, then I can take back with me to Washington and say, this is how we've expanded healthcare in Pontiac, let's expand it nationally.
All right, Kai, if you'd like to come up, and stay tuned because the healthcare industry will be an anchor industry here in the city of Pontiac. So, very good. Kai, if you want to take some questions.
Yeah. Can I get the team to help me to facilitate questions?
Hi, because the main wage earner is gone. We've raised about $20,000. It's not anywhere near enough. What can you or the state do to help those families to get resources just for, Maslow's needs? We've got to do something. And Pontiac has a large population, but so does Detroit. And what happened was the president threatened every organization that they would lose their 501c3 status if they helped them. So we created one anyway. And went for it. Because I couldn't get anybody else to do it.
Well, first of all, round of applause and thank you. What you pointed out is something that heartbreaking is not the right word. I got into government, I ran, but I now work with people. There are people in this administration and the federal government who got into government so they could break it. Now, I have worked with organizations who support immigrant families who are doing everything right. They came here to work hard. They came here to start a better life. They're going to their court appointments. They're doing everything. But I talked to one family who said, we don't even want to leave the house.
No, they don't.
We don't want to send our kids to school because we don't know if we might send them in one day if they don't come back. We've now had a year of this administration. And I think what we've seen is they figured out it's really hard to go after criminals. So they're just not. They're going after preschool teachers and grandparents and gardeners and dads and cooks. Downriver, a dad who owned a painting business, well loved in his community, dropped a second. He's done nothing wrong. Same thing out in Grand Rapids. The trauma that is inflicted on that entire bus full of kids watching their friend's dad be taken away. They don't know when he's coming home. And in the big, terrible bill and in all these budget the federal inclusion that you are at risk of losing your funding. So the short answer, and I'm just going to you, there's very little that we can do. But I have a platform. And I hope, because it's not just you, there are other organizations doing this work. So what I want to do is start to collect some of those organizations, and maybe you can share with each other, and then it's incumbent on all of us to continue to organize and win these elections, not just to win, but so we can undo all of this damage. Because I've heard from organizations who say, we're not going to change our name, we're not going to change that mission, because that is who we are and who we serve. And again, just like the people in Minnesota standing in the breach and saying, I'm going to do this work, come after me, they are. But what I know is that, especially on immigration, this was the issue that Donald Trump was polling at better than anything else. His approval rating on immigration has dropped like a rock. Because you talk to most people, they say, I don't want to hurt people who are just trying to work and live and provide for their family. I wanted to go after criminals. And they're not going after criminals. So that's just me saying thank you. I want to continue working with you on it. I wish I had a better answer.
Yeah, I just, it's tough because people are afraid to even give to it.
People are really scared.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator, my name is Jeff Kickazups. I'm a 54-year resident of Pontiac, Bloomfield Township. One of the duties of the U.S. Senate is to approve treaties. And if there should be lasting peace in the conflict between Israel and Palestine, the United States is likely to be a signatory to that agreement. Do you favor the Democratic Party's long-term position of supporting a two-state solution to the conflict between Israel and Palestine?
I do. I also support listening to the people on the ground and making sure that we have to use our position as an ally to negotiate to long-term peace and security for Palestinians and long-term peace and security for Israelis. And absolutely, we need to get to a two-state solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd love to have you as part of that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you feel about our educational system as it relates to inner city sports and anything in that realm that you can comment on.
Absolutely.
So I want to start macro and then kind of come micro. It is crazy to me that we have Linda McMahon quite literally body slamming the Department of Education out of existence. It's gone. Let's just be honest about it. But to me, as I come in, the role of the next United States Senator is seeing that not as a loss, but as an opportunity. Because I think too many people hear Democrats fighting against Trump and they say, well, I don't want to go back to the way that it was. Because when I talk to community leaders and education leaders, they say, the Department of Ed didn't always help us. They weren't as useful as they could be. So we're going to have an opportunity to effectively build a new department from the ground up. One that actually serves all students and provides opportunity for all students. And I just want to talk a little bit about Michigan. So I represent now the most diverse district in the entire state, by every measure. It's Detroit through Birmingham. I have one school in my district that was trying to secure new gear for a water polo team. That's great. Wealthy area. Voters are much more inclined to approve higher millages. So you can invest more in your schools and your after-school programs and your sports and your transportation and provide everything that's outside of just that classroom education that we know kids need to not only be successful, but to feel valued and to feel connected to the community. I helped secure funding for the Detroit City Lions, which is an organization in my district that works with Detroit PAL to provide sports, cooking, cooking lessons, services to families all throughout Detroit. They practice on Mary Grove's campus, so it's been incredible for me to see. We've revitalized Mary Grove. I was out for the first day of the season for all these kids, like in their full football gear. We had the Lions mascot. It was awesome to see it come out. And you can't, there's no way to describe their faces. They were lighting up. They had purpose. They were excited. They were going to move forward. So for me, that's, as I look at the challenge and the opportunity ahead, we have a new Department of Education. Can the federal government, for example, take on a nationwide capital campaign to rebuild all of the old school buildings so that more of our administrators can take the school aid fund, the state funding, and put that into sports and after-school programs and teachers and paraprofessionals and all the support systems, so they're not have to worry about the 100-year-old building that doesn't have HVAC and that has chairs that will give you splinters in the auditorium. That, to me, should be the role of the federal government. How do we rebuild this department, the funding, and this agency to ensure that every child and every community starts at the same starting line?
Perfect.
We have one more question.
I feel very privileged to have to ask questions. And I think I'm going to actually ask the most important question that there is tonight. My name is Kevin McAdoo. And I think the biggest question there is not relative to any policy or any issue that we're talking about right now. I think the most important thing is, who are we going to become as a country? Are we going to be defined? I asked the question, are we going to be defined by a country where we accept a lie, or we accept a cheat, or we accept unprincipled, or we accept unethical? We accept inhumanity when you can throw stuff out of a plane and say, I'm blanking on certain people, or I'm going to put a face, a monkey face over a former sitting president. When we accept narcissism to the place that it's okay and it's acceptable. And I say to people all the time, I don't really blame Donald Trump, because somebody said, this is okay with me. And when did this, or why should this be okay? So before I listen to any policy or any perspective, that's really complex stuff that you're talking about. The foundation is, who are we going to be? And that's a reflection of who we are as individuals. So I guess my question is how do you move that forward? How do you challenge your constituency? How do we challenge this country? How do you look a person in their eye and say, is this okay with you? Before we get to any other policy, why is this okay with you? So to me, that's the biggest issue that we have right now in this country. So before we get anywhere else, how do we get past that?
Kevin, you're absolutely right. I woke up the morning after the 2024 election, and I felt so sick to my stomach. Because unlike the first time you could say, this is not who we are. But he was president for 4 years. He did everything he did for 4 years. It made racism acceptable. It made using the R word to describe somebody with a cognitive disability acceptable. It made putting down women acceptable. It made lying acceptable. It made cheating acceptable. All of this was not only acceptable, but celebrated. So when I woke up the morning after that election, I said, this is who we are. And it doesn't feel good. It means we have a lot of work to do. But I think you said something that's really, really important, is that Donald Trump didn't cause this. I'm somebody, I graduated from college right into the recession. I went to college to get a degree in industrial design. I always wanted to be a car designer, which has nothing to do with politics. I got a chance to do that when I was in college. I designed a concept car. We built it live on stage at an auto show. And then I graduated in 2008. And I had no job, and I had no health insurance, and I had thousands of dollars in student loan debt, and I had nowhere to live, and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that mess. And what people like Donald Trump succeed at is recognizing when people are struggling and pitting them against their neighbors. So we have to do two things simultaneously. We have to acknowledge, when I say we're fighting this administration, it's not just to go back to the way things were, because the way things were has been broken. And there is no American dream for too many people. And it left the door open for a strong man like Donald Trump to walk right in. Put others down, you can become the president of the United States. So we need to do both at once. Start to rebuild the American dream so people can see themselves in another vision, so we give people permission. No, you don't have to be racist. You don't have to put people down. You don't have to hate people. They didn't take anything from you. The system did. And we have to hold people accountable who abuse this system to benefit themselves. I mean, make no mistake, this entire presidency is a grift operation. The president that we know of has now enriched himself to the tune of $1.4 billion since taking the presidency again. Until there's real accountability and oversight, we're never going to get out of here. So it's those two things at once, and I get really frustrated when I hear, especially Democrats, say one is a distraction from the other. It's not. The economy is not a distraction from democracy. Democracy is not a distraction from the economy. They are intricately linked. And that's the only way that we get out of it.
Guys, we're going to do something really fun, but I need you guys to move really fast. We're going to do a group selfie. So for those in the back, stand up. If you're on the side, you want to be in the selfie. Now we're just going to stand here. I'm moving out of the way.
If you want to be in the selfie, move up. All right, guys. You ready? Oh, that light is so harsh. Move up. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Pontiac.
I think it's guys. Okay, is that guys?
Oh, I got a blur. It's because of the light. There we go, right here.
Let me get over to OU.
Who are you shooting for?
I appreciate y'all tuning in today. Got more coverage to come this week, so stay tuned to the channel for more.